For 8 years after Mario Kart 8 was originally released on the Wii U, Mario Kart gamers had been playing the same old tracks. Even after the Deluxe version was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2017, everyone was expecting the next Mario Kart game to be announced. It took many years, but finally, Nintendo came and gave us exactly what we wanted. Mario Kart 9. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC. I can honestly say I did not see that coming, and I'm pretty sure most people would agree. It may not be a brand new game, but it was better than nothing to say the least. It was still nice to finally be getting new Mario Kart content at all, even if it was in the form of DLC for an 8-year-old game. It has now been over 2 years since the first out of 6 waves of the Booster Course Pass came out, and now, in 2024, the game is in its final form once and for all. Soon after the release of each wave, I made a review video that briefly went over some of the new features and individually talked about each track. However, over time, some of my opinions have changed as I got more experience playing them. That is the purpose of this video, to explain what my current thoughts are and to give a final rating of the Booster Course Pass as a whole. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Before I get too much into the new courses, I want to talk about the new features and mechanics that have been implemented. When the DLC was first announced, we were only promised 48 new tracks, so every time something new came along, it was always a nice surprise. Especially the characters, which started showing up in Wave 4, when Birdo was revealed. We then got Kamek, Wiggler, and Petey Piranha in Wave 5, which left us with what we thought were only 2 more empty slots for Wave 6. But surprise, we ended up getting 4 characters instead. Those being Diddy Kong, Funky Kong, Pauline, and Peachette. I know that some of these characters were criticized by fans for being included, but the way I see it, the fact that we got any characters at all is a nice bonus that didn't have to happen at all. So in that sense, I'm happy with all 8 characters that were added to the DLC. Aside from characters, we also got a custom items feature that allowed us to choose which items can and cannot appear during a race. Not gonna lie, it is so much fun to turn on blue shells only, pick Baby Park, and let all hell break loose, especially online. There's also a music menu, which allows players to listen to all the different music tracks and variations for each course in the game. It's kind of cool to have this, but I don't really see much use for it as all the songs are already available online, but it's kind of nice to have nonetheless. Throughout the Booster Course Pass, various changes have been made to the stats of certain characters and vehicle parts. For the most part, they've just been balance changes, but during Wave 3, a new hidden stat was added that affects how long your invincibility frames last. This means that some vehicle combos can be hit again sooner after being hit by an item than others can. And this is now something that you have to keep in mind when choosing your combo. Although I have mixed feelings about iframes in general, I think this is a great way to incentivize choosing other more obscure combos that were once obsolete. With Wave 3 and beyond, some courses began implementing half pipes, similar to how they work in Mario Kart Wii. While they did have to use existing anti-gravity mechanics to make it work in this game, I feel like they did a pretty good job, considering that half pipes were never intended to work in this game. They can be a little wonky at times, most notably on that half pipe on the last inside turn of DK Summit, where it just straight up throws you off or triggers strange physics sometimes, but most of the time they're pretty solid. Now, as we all know by now, every single DLC course came from Mario Kart Tour. Even if they arrived in the Booster Course Pass first, it's pretty clear that they were all designed for Tour. This in itself isn't bad, but when you consider how different the mechanics are on Tour compared to 8, it can make it a little hard to drive on some of the courses. Most of the DLC tracks work fine in this game, but a few of them are rather tough to drive on. Funny enough, those are also the ones I seem to enjoy the most, but even with that said, I can't deny that they were not designed for this game. Some examples include Ninja Hideaway, Amsterdam Drift, and DK Summit. With Ninja Hideaway, you just got a lot of 90-degree turns to deal with. Amsterdam Drift has similar issues. And DK Summit, well, I just mentioned that, the half pipes are kind of wonky. Of course, not every single track that was in Tour was brought over to this game, because there are just so many and not all of them would fit in the Booster Course Pass. However, Every single course that was original to Mario Kart Tour is brought over, with the exception of Piranha Plant Pipeline. I think this is a good way to preserve the Tour exclusive tracks, as that game will not stay online forever. Now this includes all the city courses that Mario Kart Tour is known for, which all introduce a new gimmick in this game of the route changing on every lap. Not everyone is a fan of this, but I personally love it, as it makes each lap feel different. You know, because they are all different. It's something I hope they expand on in the next Mario Kart game, as I think there's a lot more they could do with this gimmick than just simple route changes. But that's a topic for another time. However, a lot of the people who dislike these tracks say so because the routes feel sort of aimless and random. I don't fully agree with this, but I do see where they're coming from, especially on courses like London Loop, Berlin Byways, and Rome Avanti. I suppose that these courses do seem to go all over the place with no real direction, almost as if they designed the city and then the route, and not the other way around as I feel like it should have been. But tracks like Tokyo Blur, Vancouver Velocity, and Madrid Drive do feel pretty intuitive when it comes to their routes. When looking at the tracks in this DLC as a whole, you can see how widely different they all are, not only from the base game courses, but from each other as well. I don't necessarily see this as a good thing. I mean, first and foremost, we got the graphics. This has been an underlying issue with the Booster Course Pass ever since the day it was first revealed, with some people arguing that they should have done a better job making them look good, while others say that they are fine as is and it doesn't take away from the fun of the courses. Many people even say the current art style and graphics of these tracks are better than the base game tracks. Me? I do think that they should have kept the DLC tracks graphically consistent with the rest of the game. Unfortunately, the DLC isn't even graphically consistent with itself. I find it kind of crazy that a track that looks as incredible as Waluigi Stadium can be found with the same $25 purchase as SNES Mario Circuit 3. I also find it crazy that this version of Toad Circuit isn't the same game as this version of Yoshi Circuit. I mean, come on, look at this. It's just very jarring. While the graphics did improve with newly released tracks for the most part, they never really reached base game standards. Yeah, not even Waluigi Stadium is quite graphically consistent with the game. It's pretty close, but it's not quite there. I mean, look at the dirt. Now, I know graphics aren't everything, and I'm not saying that they are, but they also aren't worthless. There's still an important factor to consider when designing a game, especially if it's DLC for an existing game where the graphical standards have already been established. That's why I think it's important to hold the DLC graphics to a better standard than a lot of people are giving. Another thing I find worth noting is the lack of any real anti-gravity sections. Yeah, we do have some, but when you really think about it, do we really? I mean, the way I see it, every single anti-gravity section in the Booster Course Pass didn't really have to be one. Every time it was activated, it was either on a slight incline or it's just persistent throughout the entire race. I know that all of these tracks came from Mario Kart Tour, but honestly, I think that's part of the problem. Because the tracks came from Tour, they weren't able to truly implement anti-gravity in any of the courses, as Tour does not have any anti-gravity at all. The reason that this really sucks is the fact that anti-gravity is supposed to be the main gimmick of the game. But because all the DLC tracks are ports from Mario Kart Tour, all the anti-gravity we got in the entire DLC was just being slightly sideways. Nothing too special. However, it isn't all bad, as most of the music that comes along with each track is really good. There is like one single exception to this. Other than that, it is obvious that a lot of effort went into the soundtrack for this pass. I'm really happy about that. As I mentioned earlier, I had made review videos for each individual wave. I also said that some of my opinions have changed. I'm not going to go over each track, of course, but I am going to mention what has changed for me and why. For the first wave, I had praised Paris Promenade and Tokyo Blur for including the gimmick of changing the route for each lap. Of course, as I said before, I still love this gimmick. But now that we have so many more city tracks to choose from, these two just seem so stale in comparison, as the rest of the city tracks are not only more visually appealing, but also have better execution on the route changes. For that reason, my rating for both of these tracks have dropped significantly. For Wave 2, I had criticized Sky High Sundae for not being well polished. At the time, I still thought the track was okay. I still thought it was fun, just that it needed some work. Unfortunately, the more I play on the track, the more I have come to hate it. And with there being more original tracks that are just much better, this one's just not good at all. So my rating has dropped for this course as well. In Wave 3, I had originally said that despite the bad visuals, Rock Mountain was still fun. This has changed over time and I no longer really look forward to playing it. Honestly, I'm not really sure what has changed. I guess it's just gotten stale. Probably in part to the visuals. And now I think it's just as forgettable as a Mario Kart 7 version. Finally, with Wave 4, we got DK Summit. I always enjoyed this track, and that hasn't changed. What has changed is my opinion of it on 200cc. Originally, I strongly hated playing this track on 200cc because the track was not designed for it. I didn't originally mention this in my Wave 4 review video, but even at the time, I couldn't stand playing this track on 200cc. But over time, as I've gotten used to it, I actually have fun with it now. Too bad this doesn't also apply to Yoshi's Island, but unfortunately, I still hate that one on 200cc. Well, that just about wraps things up with my opinion on the Booster Course Pass and everything it has to offer. It has been a great couple of years of receiving new content for a game that we originally thought was on its way out. I mean, come on, who thought that Nintendo was going to make DLC for a game that has been out for 5 years on the Switch and 8 years in total? It is totally worth paying the $25 to purchase them. I think the Booster Course Pass was a great way to hold Mario Kart fans off until they finally decide to announce the next Mario Kart game. But until then, I will continue to enjoy all 96 courses that are now part of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Until next time, be sure to like the video and subscribe for new content. Check out my channel for more, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.